Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to edition 10 of Food Safety Fridays, your weekly webinar program. It's good to be here today. They come round really quickly, these Fridays, but it's a nice day to have Friday anyway. I quite enjoy them. So today we've got Steve Gruler, President and CEO of Global Quality Consultants, Inc. Steve's been with us earlier in the year. And Steve today is going to be talking about integrated crisis management planning. It carries on the theme somewhat of last week. Vladimir last week was talking about training, specifically rolling out a plan to employees, a crisis management plan, so that they're active in that. It's no good having a plan if nobody knows what they're doing when a crisis situation occurs. Steve's taken it back up to a higher level, I think, today, really. Talking about outlining the need for a comprehensive plan and the lack of preparedness that consumer products companies have, and how it can benefit them in a situation to have a rapid response plan. And it also covers the critical elements and the functional benefits of a holistic plan. So looking forward to that. You can see we've got plenty of attendees logging in. Welcome to you all. It's nice to see you. Hopefully we've got some regulars there. Just a quick thank you to the sponsors who help to bring these to you every week and keep them free for you. Safe Food 360, Trace Analytics, FSSC and IFS. Thank you to the sponsors. I can see Steve's ready on his webcam, so I'll head over to Steve and just... Are you there, Steve? Hi, Steve. Nice to see you.
Nice seeing you. Can you guys see me?
Certainly can. How's the weather in Arizona today, Steve? Don't tell me it's sunny.
Well, we've got a cold front coming in. It'll probably get in the mid-80s today. So.
Oh dear, such a shame for you.
It is. We struggle, we're like everyone else, but with the rest of the world getting snow and stuff, I'm pretty happy with what we've got. So.
Well, we're glad you're sharing a few rays of sunshine with us today. We've had a solar eclipse today on top of everything else in England, so even taking away a bit more sun from us. So what little we have. Okay, Steve, so while you get your presentation ready, I'll talk to the attendees about next week's webinar, and I'll see you shortly.
Okay.
Okay, next week, we have Britta Ball from the States. She's principal consultant at Advancing Food Safety Culture. Next week, really interesting topic, 3 areas of focus to make food safety training stick. Now, we all have to do food safety training. It's mandatory, a mandatory requirement of food safety standards, certification standards. We have to do refresher training, we have to do baseline training, and it makes sense to do it. It helps educate employees, keep food safe, continuous improvement, etc. So we want to make it effective, and whatever means we do, whether it's some simple training or expensive training, it should always be effective. And so Britta's going to be talking to us about how to make our training programs effective, and I've logged on with her this week doing some practice sessions, and it is a really, really interesting session, so please do register for next week. Okay, so I'll be back with the Q&A shortly, and I can see Steve's ready with his presentation, so we'll just get straight into it. Okay, thank you. Okay, Steve.
Can everybody hear me okay? Can you hear me?
I can, yeah, we can hear you, Steve. Cheers.
Great, okay. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to be with you this morning. I'm going, as Simon mentioned, I'm going to share kind of an overview on integrated crisis management planning. And I think as we go through this, keep in mind that there's some key elements that we understand what the plan looks like. But I think one of the biggest errors companies make, and that is being prepared. Many companies have compliance type documents for crisis management, but they're not really documents that's integrated into their culture, their risk appetite, the way they run their business. So it's not really a natural flow for them. And unfortunately, so many companies that we've worked with over the years, they find themselves building or creating their crisis plan in the midst of one. And I got to tell you, it's the worst time to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I just want to tell a little bit about Global Quality Consulting. We're a management consulting company with we focus on enterprise risk management and crisis management, food safety, and quality assurance. As you can see, our mission is to help companies identify, manage, and mitigate risk to their brands. And over the 8 years we've been in business, we've gone from a very myopic look at that to a more comprehensive plan. And we found that that's brought a lot of benefit to our customers. The other thing I think we focus on that helps us and helps the customer is whatever we work with them to do, we make sure it seamlessly fits within their culture. The appetite for risk, I think, is critical, especially when you're looking at crisis management. Very few of us have the same appetite for risk. So when building these plans, and if you're building these plans for your companies, it's one thing you really want to make sure you do, that it's integrated. It's kind of seamless. It just fits into the company, and it's just another tool that you guys use on a common basis. This slide here just talks a little bit of kind of our menu services we offer, and you can see comprehensive risk mitigation plans, crisis simulations. You'll see as part of the plan, one of the key elements is that there needs to be scheduled simulations, and it's not just testing your recall plans, which you all do, probably more often than you want with all the different audits that you have, but this goes far beyond that. It tests the decision making, it tests the flow, it tests how you respond to social media and maybe BBC or a major network pulling up in front of your organization and your company. We also focus a lot on proactive risk mitigation. I think it's one of the cores that we focus on and build our systems. We try to move beyond what the industry has been for years and years and years of a inspect and reject philosophy to one that allows us to predict and prevent issues from happening, and we find that has also been very beneficial to various companies. There's going to be a poll today. Simon's going to put a poll up to ask if you have a comprehensive crisis plan in place, and this is just a few of the elements that defines that question. And what is a comprehensive plan? Well, it's one that you can see looks more holistic of all your risks and perils, not just within your four walls or within your organization, but also neighboring locations and things of that nature. I mean, do you have a neighbor that's use ammonia? What happens to you and your business if they have a leak? Are you downwind? How do you manage that? How do you get notified? That should all be within your crisis management plan, and you need to meet with your neighbors and see what they have in place and share what you have in place, and maybe get copies of their plan. The plan also, comprehensive plan, is one that I talked about a little bit earlier, touched on. It's got to align with your natural organization design. It's got to be right fitted, and I'll show you what ones that we feel and design and feel is one of the best, but it's got to be flexible enough to fit with your company. It's not a compliance tool. It's a business tool to mitigate risk to manage risk to your brand during the middle of a crisis. Although if you build it right, it'll pass any compliance audit you'll ever have. We believe quite heavily on multi-level cross-functional teams. The teams we look at are based on hierarchy. In other words, 3 team levels: executives, middle management, and supervisory and staff. The teams are also based on functions. You've got functional leaders within your organization. And the other piece is they've got to have clear roles and responsibility. One of the key areas that companies tend to struggle with is effective communication plans. Later on, I'll show you a very busy chart that just kind of shows the different flows and things as things happen. But one of the key questions you have to ask in a plan is, how does the critical information get to the right decision maker in a timely manner? Ones that we look at, what we try to do is look at natural flow, whether it's coming from regulatory, coming from consumer complaints, coming from your customers, from internal employees, is typically try to, depending on the size of larger companies, is try to funnel those into a central area that you have people collecting the data, and based on triggers, certain words and triggers, is how they funnel it out to the functional leaders to determine scope and severity and those that I like to say, who has the authority to ring the bell? So if you start getting consumer complaints, or maybe people get ill eating your food, who has the authority to sit there and say, this is getting to be more than just an isolated complaint? We need to implement and start our crisis management plan and go full force with this stuff. So those are kind of things we look at. External communications is another big area that companies really, I think, I know in the U.S. we're very naive when it comes to today's form of communication. That's social media. I believe every company needs to have in their crisis management plan is a crisis communication piece, and that includes things like dark websites. Those are things that are used to help in social media. I'm actually going to show you a couple of videos. One was on a dark website. The other one was on the news on communications. And I think when we look at these videos, you'll see who was prepared and handled it well, and you'll see one that was not so prepared and the impact of that. So in that piece, you got to have things like pre-vetted communications. You have to have clear identified spokespersons that have been trained and go for that aspect of it. The also piece I mentioned earlier, realistic crisis simulations. You've got to pressure test your plans at least at a minimum on an annual basis. I tune it to being a sports team. You have this great plan to go out in the field and execute this plan, but if you don't practice it, when you do have to use it, you're going to be a little rusty, and it's not going to be very effective. So you need to practice it on an annual basis. As I go through talking about these plans and sharing them, I want you to kind of keep this slide a little bit in mind. It outlines the stages that you go through of a situation, how it runs from crisis management to business continuation to business resumption, and you can see the various things of what when you build a plan, you need to look at this as the very beginning of it, the immediate aftermath, the damage contained, resumption. How do you put the fire out first and control it, keep it from spreading, and then go to assessing the damage, monitoring the piece, determine scope and severity, using your resources available, and then eventually get back to business resumption. So how does that work? A crisis management plan typically has two key phases. One is immediate response, and the second is recovery. And the plan needs to be built that way. What resources do you bring to immediate respond, and again get the crisis at best or at worst contained, if not completely handled? And then the second piece gets into recovery. And you can see crisis management deals with the immediate response to crisis, but it also ensures that getting back to normal recovery of the business is effective and executed. Business continuity plans deal more with the recovery phase. So that's the reason we like to talk about integrated emergency management system, because it takes these two elements and makes sure they're integrated together, and the key and the focus of your planning. I don't know whether Simon's got the poll up, but as we go through this, feel free to take that poll, because we do want to share the results with you as we go on. And Simon, you're also watching. You're watching for questions as we go through, right? From that. Okay.
Yeah.
This is just a quick outline, a rough outline of what we see as a very, very effective structure of a crisis management plan. We like the three-tier structure with a three-tier incident coding, and I'll share that in the next slide coming. And by the three-tier structure is we see three distinct teams, and again, this has to be right-sized. We've worked with many companies where the executive team and the middle managers and the incident management team was one and the same due to their culture. Very hands-on executive team, smaller company, a family-owned business. A lot of times you'll see that. So you would, in that case, only have two tiers and adjust it again when you right-size it. But you see the executive team has clear responsibilities. They provide the resources. They're the ones that make the risk decisions. So do we institute the crisis communication plans? Do we reach out to the media? Do we start putting our clear, concise, and consistent message on social media? Do we recall product? What do we do from that aspect of it? So they're the ones that are responsible for doing that. The next plan, the next level is what we call issue management teams, and they can be product related, for instance, health and safety and environmental, quality, other natures, HR, people related. But those teams do a couple things. We believe, number one, they typically consist of middle to senior management. It's critical that they're cross-functional. And by that, we mean that each function needs to have a seat at the table, because you'll see this team is the one that starts the initial action to gain control, the first emergency response, and monitors that. But they also are the ones that determine scope and severity. How big is this? How severe is this? And then they kind of, based on that aspect of it, should make recommendations to the executive team on next steps. Do we issue a recall? Do we do the things that we talked about earlier? This middle team also, they're the ones that initiate communication. So this is where we believe the initial information needs to come into. So the team says they're determining scope and severity, but at the same time, they are notifying a key call list within their organization, key managers, that one, there's an incident brewing. You'll see we've got a little coded slide coming up that they can put it in a rough category of how severe it is. And they keep the organization notified, especially executive teams. So for instance, you'll see in here with some of the coding, if we had a situation that was rising, we think we may have a media event, they'll probably put it in a code red, but the initial communication could go out to the key managers and the executive team. Hey, and this is going on. We've called the issues management teams together. We think it has a potential being a code red with this. So now, and then stay tuned as they get more information. So now everyone knows that they've got a potential significant event going on with the company. They know they've got the right people managing that company, because these teams are pre-selected based on that. And they know that they need to stay tuned because somebody's going to reach out for them for some aspect of it. This team also makes sure continuous updates and status and communication. They manage that internal piece of it. And again, as I said earlier, they make recommendations based on the scope and severity to the executive team. The business recovery teams, those are typically on-site teams. They're the ones that are actually doing some of the performing the recalls, shutting line downs, managing the emergency response teams, whatever it may be. And their job is to provide updates on recovery and bring the business back to a steady state and manage that piece. So those are the ones that we find a very, very effective team. There's a lot of benefits by this team, the structure and being cross-functional, that helps with communications and coordination within an organization. I talked about coding. I think it's good to have a coding aspect of it, definitions, so that you can quickly put things into scope and communicate with people just by the category put into it. And you can see level one, we've got some examples. Level one is a yellow code. Level two, you can go to orange or whatever color, or go to level three is red. And you see that the potential impact on the organization is more severe as you go up to level three. So again, as I talked about earlier, in initial communications out to the group, we have a potential level two. This is what's going on. This is the division or the plant or the product aspect of it. Here's kind of the scope and severity, and here's what we're collecting more information. And as we get more data, we'll come with a recommendation to the executive team. In crisis management planning, you first have to start with analyzing your business. Understand the complexity of your organization, the interactions within your organization, inside and outside your organization. Get a clear understanding what the business is, so that you can now go and assess the risk for that business, for your overall plan. Where does the risk lies? Where do we have the highest potential for risk? And you can look at a regular risk model, from what's severe, high probability, and major impact. So a typical quadrant a risk aspect of it. You can look from that approach to identify this. And again, this needs to be for all perils and looking at it from the holistic piece of your business. And then you develop your strategy on how you're going to approach this, and what do you want to build. Do you need a three-tier system? How's that going to work? How's that going to bring it into your business? And what comes out at this point is really where you start personalizing, as I talked about before, is kind of integrated into your business as a business tool and concept, but it also gets a clear understanding of the appetite for risk. Some people may want to take on more risk than others. I know they do. So, and the executive team kind of sets that, and it's not only brand risk, but financial risk, things of that nature. And then you build the plan as we talked about. And the top line on the plan is you've got to be crystal clear on who does what, when, and where, who has the various authorities, and how that goes. And then you have to do, as I said earlier, is rehearse the plan. You got to do that at least on a annual basis. I don't know what happened there, but I went backwards. When you look at analyzing your business, these are the things you kind of need to look at. You know, where are you vulnerable? Is it with your own company, personnel aspect of it? What could happen? What that risk look like? What about your customers, your buildings, your suppliers, which I think in today's world is one of that should be about 4 times the size of the rest of them. It's usually the area that causes, especially from a product standpoint, the biggest areas of risk for most companies. And as you go through it, you need to look at those things and determine on, you know, what's essential within this organization. How does one fit with another? Are there any type of legal aspects, regulatory obligations of this department? And do they already have business continuity plans for their department in their area? So as you go through analyzing it, it'll give you the basis for your plan. This is that chart I was talking about an integrated emergency plan. Apologizing for it being awful busy. But you can see information comes in from all angles and goes to all different places. You can have regulatory agencies contacting directly the food safety folks, or to consumer services because they got an 800 number that they see on the label of your product. They could, if they go into customer services, most companies have the trigger points and say, okay, here's a potential issue. This is just a normal information, or no, this is something that could create risk to our brand, and I need to get it to the food safety regulatory group, or I need to get over to health and safety. And it goes from that piece of it. Then it flows on through to your crisis management plan. And you may even, I don't know what I'm doing there, folks, I'm sorry, but I'm touching my mouse and it ran backwards. And even in some companies, I didn't mention it earlier, but some companies even have emergency operations centers where they've got them throughout the company. That's where everyone meets when a major crisis hit. I know some companies we've worked with out on the West Coast, they have them due to earthquakes. So if they have an earthquake, they all know where they need to try to get to if they can, or call into. They've got a center that's all set up to help them manage the crisis. I think this is one that companies struggle with, or it's an opportunity for them to make an error in building their plans. And they build their plans based on positions and titles. And a lot of times they go together, but you also need to look at strengths, capability, and the resources you have. And you see we've broken it down based on those 3 tiers again. Your strategic thinkers, they're the thinkers. Tacticals, the planners and coordinators. Operations are the doers. But just because someone has a particular title does not necessarily mean they're the best selected person or best pick for that role that you've created in your crisis management plan. If there's not, you have obviously the opportunities of training and bringing them up to that speed, or maybe there's someone else within the organization that's got the skill sets but maybe not have the title to go through and do it from that aspect. The other thing I think is key, and what we try to do with our system is use that three-tier system as a core, and you can see if you have that as a core of your system, then what you do is based on the individual function or the individual peril, you bring those into it and bring those elements into the core system, because typically on those things you see, workplace, could be workplace violence, product contamination, natural disaster, terrorism, media event, those are all going to, should be, depending on the severity and the scope of them, go through that process and funnel their way up to executive team. Many companies I've worked with and worked for, the natural crisis management team is that someone finds an issue or thinks an issue, and depending on their relationship with the executive, they'll walk in their office or give them a call and start the ball rolling. And you'll find that that's that way to do it. And again, that's natural. It's not planned, it's not coordinated, and it all depends on who's available. Very, very risky. Many companies have that concept. I've lived in it, I've managed it, I've been responsible for some of those in various companies I've worked with, so I understand it. So it's very natural. But I think one thing you do when you build a plan, you help increase the potential for success significantly by going through and having this coordinated and linked up from that aspect of it. Let's see if we can get these videos to play, and I hope you can hear them. These are a couple examples of crisis communications, and I'll let you be the judge of which ones you think you'd like your company to be.
We're sorry for the massive disruption it's caused to their lives. And there's no one who wants this thing over more than I do. I'd like my life back. So there's no one who wants this thing done more than I do. And we are doing everything we can to contain the oil offshore, defend the shoreline, and return people's lives to normal as fast as we can.
I don't know how many people remember that BP incident and followed it. Being in crisis management, it's something that I follow personally and listen to. And every day they gave us a jewel that just constantly reminded us and the world that they weren't prepared. They weren't even prepared to be able to communicate what was going on. The impact of the company was well into the billions, not only from the spill, but just from a loss in stock shareholders' price, and due to the fact of how well they handled the crisis.
Steve, can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah, I can hear you.
One thing I just noticed just from that short clip is that I've not seen it before. Is that he said about getting his own life back on track. In that huge disaster that costs the environmental catastrophe that it was, and the problems it caused. He was just more focused about perhaps what he going out for a meal at weekend, being able to go out for a meal or something.
Well, I think that's exactly right, and it's there's no doubt he's a very intelligent man. I mean, he was the head of the organization. He knows the business, but you're right, it sends the wrong message. And if they had a plan, when you build the crisis communications, you sit down with quite frankly, I'm surprised they did not sit down with a top level crisis communication firm, not necessarily a PR firm. There's a difference, and I'll warn you about that. PR firms are ones that help you with your advertising, your commercials, your magazine ads. They're great of sharing positive data. Sometimes they lack and not as good as sharing negative data or damaging data. That's where a crisis communication firm comes in. But the number one rule that you saw that he violated was he turned it in that it was all about him. Yeah. And it was all about him and BP, poor them. And again, he's doing this while he's standing on a beach in the southern part of the U.S., a sandy beach with oil coming up on it and ducks covered. I mean, obviously very disastrous. And quite frankly, I know it cost him billions, and I think he's actually, the last I heard is, and I don't have confirmation of this, but last I heard he was given a position somewhere in Siberia or out in the middle of Russia someplace, but nice and cold area. So it didn't work out very well for him. So, but the point is,
right, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The point to this is they had, well, one is I look at crisis management planning. If you're in the oil business and got oil rigs, it's not a stretch to think what happened to BP could happen. And so then you figure out, okay, if it does happen, what do we need to go through and minimize it? What equipment do we need? Where do we get help? What's our communication plans? What are we going to do? You know, and those clearly weren't there with BP.
Yeah.
And,
I think just one thing, Steve. When a disaster, obviously you should be geared up not to have that type of disaster in the first place. But should that type of disaster, or your own disaster, whatever your BP is in your company, whatever your own disaster is, it can go to one of two ways, can't it? You've had the disaster. You either you've got to deal with obviously if people are potentially exposed to risk or food safety issues, obviously you've got to deal with that. But in terms of the communication, it can go two ways. It can make the situation worse or better. That's as simple as that, isn't it?
It really is, and it's interesting. In Oxford University, there in the UK where you're at, Simon, there was a study done by a couple economists, and this was probably 10 years plus ago. Deborah Preddy I think, was one of the authors, but they actually studied the impact of disasters on shareholder value, stock price. And they did it for all kinds of things, product recalls, airplane crashes, very serious situations. And what they found out was there was an immediate drop when the incident hit, and the share values dropped anywhere from 15 to 20, 30%. And then as time went on, they formed two groups. One group never made it back to the original value before the crisis. Another group went back to original and went on and grew quite well in stock price over time. And then they asked themselves, as a bit perplexing, looked at the data, how could a disaster like that actually be profitable for an organization? And the conclusion they came to is, and it's one I agree with, is it was not the actual incident was the issue that impacted. It was how the organization responded and managed it.
Yeah.
And I think it's examples I'm giving here. One is BP that didn't handle it well. The next one I'm going to show you is Maple Leaf Foods. For those of you that may not be familiar with them, they are a ready-to-eat meat organization in Canada. They had a listeria issue that there was somewhere around 20 plus fatalities linked to their product. And I'll move on to the next slide and you'll see what Mike McCain has to say about their situation, and hopefully you'll see the difference.
My name is Michael McCain. As you may know, listeria was found in some of our products. Even though listeria is a bacteria commonly found in many foods and in the environment, we worked diligently to eliminate it. When listeria was discovered in the product, we launched immediate recalls to get it off the shelf. Then we shut the plant down. Tragically, our products have been linked to illnesses and loss of life. To Canadians who are ill and the families who have lost loved ones, I offer my deepest sympathies. Words cannot begin to express our sadness for your pain. Maple Leaf Foods is 23,000 people who live in a culture of food safety. We have an unwavering commitment to keeping your food safe with standards well beyond regulatory requirements. But this week, our best efforts failed, and we are deeply sorry. This is the toughest situation we faced in 100 years as a company. We know this has shaken your confidence in us. I commit to you that our actions are guided by putting your interests first.
What a difference, huh? I can tell you the results that this absolutely saved the company. Michael, not only did he make the initial comment when the issue happened, but he did something else, which is key in crisis communication. By the fact that he went out and did, and this went out on YouTube, by the way, so this was a use of social media at its best. He led the subject matter. He kind of set the tone. He got his message here, his clear, concise, and consistent message out. So now the media found themselves following rather than leading and asking a lot of crazy questions, because every day Mike would come on and give an update. this absolutely turned his company around. They're back well beyond what they were before. This now is becoming kind of the case study of how to handle a crisis in a lot of MBA schools today. So huge difference.
And I think, Steve, it goes right to the heart of human behaviour, doesn't it? Right to the core, really. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And at the end of the day, we're all human. We all make mistakes. And if you hold your hands up and say, look, we've made a mistake, we've got a good record, we're sorry, it's our fault, and then talk about how we can move on, then that builds trust, doesn't it? As opposed to the BP guy. It's a complete contrast.
It is, and I think all the things you should do in crisis communication, Mike did. He acknowledged the situation. He recognized their role. He was accountable for some of the piece. He showed clear passion. I know the first time I saw it, I thought he was talking to me. I really did. I got that engrossed in it. I said, wow, this guy's really got his heart in it. I believe what he's saying. He's taking the right actions. And I know, after the fact, I know that during this piece, the pressures he went through from his legal department, like, are you crazy? You can't be going out publicly admitting to some of these things. But yet, to your point, Simon, it's pretty commonsensical. And his point was, we did make a mistake. We did have a problem, and we're not going to hide under our desk. We're not going to say no comment, which, by the way, if you're going to build a plan, no comment today is you might as well say we're guilty, and you should come at us with everything you can. Years ago, no comment was accepted, but if you say no comment today, then everybody knows you're guilty and you're hiding something, or that's their belief. So you're absolutely right. It's a huge difference, but the key is, to me, if I ask which one was prepared and which one wasn't, it's pretty obvious. Pretty obvious the difference.
Yeah, very good. That's great. Thanks, Steve.
To kind of wrap up, I want to share with you what I think some of the top benefits I see with building a comprehensive plan like this. And again, it prepares a company to get out in front and lead the issue. They're not back on their heels. It's a very clearly defined process. I've lived in both worlds. I've lived in the one I talked about, the natural one. I've experienced that. It's very uncomfortable. It doesn't work well. And the confidence of being able to deliver the results just isn't there. I've also lived under and managed under one of these comprehensive plans, and it's amazing. My personal experience went from one that was nerve-wracking, one that we weren't sure what was going to happen. We just kept our fingers crossed and hoped we were lucky. And most time we were lucky rather than good. Versus the other one, it was clear what was there. The issues were handled quite professionally and quite rapidly. It was amazing how quick we could get the organizations together, get decisions made, respond, and take the appropriate action to save the company and save the brand. So I've seen it act. I've been involved with it. I've seen them both work, and there's clearly the ones that are planned, stating the obvious, the one that plan for it are better off. And you can see it clearly identifies who does what, when, and where. It identifies the functions are impacted by each peril. But I think one I hopefully I emphasized it, maybe not enough, but the fact that being team-based approach, it really has significant aspect in minimizing silos. Most companies I work for, there's a lot of silos that aren't necessarily integrated. Functions doing their role, but it's not integrated with the business and an overall business risk. This eliminates that. It really does. And I think that the other piece is, by doing that, you're ensuring the appropriate functions has a seat at the table. They have their input. Whether it's accepted or their recommendation is accepted or what they want to do is one thing, but at least I think most functions and most companies I work with, they just need to have kind of their day in court to be able to handle these pieces. So with that, we'll open it up for questions and go from there.
That's great, Steve. Thanks very much for that. That's the first time we've tried sharing some video through a presentation. So we live streaming video with a video on top, and it worked so great. And it did provide, the two videos provide a great contrast between the two ways the different companies approach that, and was prepared, let's say, or not prepared for that situation. The poll's been running. I know some people have had problems with it. But
Really?
we've got some votes, and if you can see there, I don't know if you can see in the polls tab. Does your business have
yeah.
So we got does your business have a comprehensive crisis management plan? Yes, 36%. No, 27%, and 36 partial. So just remind us again, what does comprehensive mean in this context, Steve?
Well, I think it goes back to that one slide where you've got an organized plan. It's designed based on your company's culture, your company's natural plan. You've got multiple tiers. You've got crisis communication plans involved and defined. They're pre-vetted. You know what you're going to say before the issue happens. So all you do is plug in the particular issue and go from there. You have trained personnel. You practice it on an annual basis at least, and hopefully it's a simulation and not the real thing. Go from that aspect. But those are typically things of what we went through with the presentation. What a comprehensive plan looks like.
Yeah. Well, I find that 36% quite high. Actually, I would. When you outline a comprehensive plan and all that entails, 36% sounds high, but that is encouraging if that's an accurate reflection. But anyway, that's the poll. We're at 27% interestingly don't have a comprehensive crisis management plan, and so that is the concern.
Well, and I agree with you. As I see 36, I think that is higher than what I anticipated, but it's encouraging. I'm glad to see that. The other piece with the 27%, I'm surprised it's that low, but maybe a lot of that falls into partial, because I know many companies we work with, when we talk to the executive team, said, what is your crisis plan? They said, oh, we can recall product within minutes. So they think of their recall capabilities, which is part of it, as their plan, and so maybe that's where the partial comes in, and we've got those in place.
Yeah, could be. I mean, one thing these days with social media, I can take a photograph on the beach, wherever that was, or BP. I can take a photograph of an oily seagull and have that on a news desk within seconds.
Yeah, you should. Yes, and unfortunately, I think most companies don't understand how social media works and what the key is, how to play the game. And how they can turn that into benefit to them. Most of the times they find out the negative piece of it, especially if they're the end of the story and part of that piece. So that's an interesting piece.
Yeah. So I guess then, if you're fast enough and you've got a plan that allows you to be rapid, you then can shape the story and be proactive rather than having to react to just endless questions that are scattergun.
Absolutely, that's the strategy, and it works. So get out ahead of the message, lead the message. As we like to say, it's critical that you can quickly get your clear, concise, and consistent message out to the organization. And that's the reason you want one spokesperson, so it's all funneled through there, and it is consistent.
I'll just read a few of the comments out. Christina said, I use this case as an example of crisis training. The video you showed, very good example of open communication. Right. Martha says, never lie about a crisis and get the information out before the bad breath comes out. Kimberly clearly outlined the situation, some of the science. So they outlined some of the guy from, is it Maple Leaf? He outlined showed an understanding of some of the science as well behind. He showed a knowledge of the science. Yeah,
it does, and I think to that point they picked up on it. The the where he was at, the fact he didn't have a tie on, and all that, the environment, the message that was singing was all pre-planned. That's exactly kind of the message they want to send.
Yeah. Even though it's pre-planned, it can still be sincere, can't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, pre-planned doesn't mean it's. Some people think that's negative, but I think just the opposite. Because we tell companies when they get into crisis, this is an opportunity to share what great things you do also. And, because many companies do. I mean, Maple Leaf, for instance, they give food away, they donate tons of money to charities. They've got a rich history. They've been around for quite a few years. So I think during a crisis, it's beneficial to remind the public of kind of your core principles and who you are as a company and what you do for society overall. And, oh, by the way, we did have an issue, and we're fixing that issue. And I think people accept that and appreciate it.
Yeah. If any attendees got a particular question, please do feel free to type in now. I'll continue to read a few comments out. Somebody's mentioned that the impact of social media these days is just, it takes it to a different level, but you can't hide from that, can you, Steve? I don't suppose.
No, you can't hide. You can't hide under your desk. I mean, many people try. We just recently we've worked with a company before, and it's quite interesting. I think it was a company that was a supplier to major fast food chains, and their China operations had a little personnel dispute, and they videoed somebody dropping something on the floor. The local Shanghai FDA got involved. No violations, no issues, but since this company did not quite understand the culture of China and the do's and don'ts when dealing with organizations and public announcements and that aspect of it, they took the classic U.S. stance. They didn't communicate well. Today that company is out of business. The investigation went on the Shanghai FDA. I don't think this has been 9 months ago. It happened last July. They still haven't issued their final results. Yeah. So it's not always, like I say, it's not necessarily the issue that happened. It's how the company responds. And here's where this company is an example. That's it's got all the GFSI certifications, top-notch equipment, top-notch people, but they didn't understand the cultures and stuff in the companies of the country they're dealing with, and it cost them their business in China.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a question from Raman Kumar Sharma, who he's asking who should be the person that handles the media at the time of a crisis. Should it be someone like the QA manager or higher management? Well,
I think, to me, the answer to that, in my mind, it's dependent on the situation. If it's a kind of an HR situation, a non-serious HR situation, in other words, no criminal activities, things of that nature, then I think someone in HR would be the one that should talk about it. If it's a fatality linked to the organization, in my mind, and our experience have been, it's clearly the CEO, whoever he or she is, because company want to hear from the very top person when you have something of that severity. Some of them a little less severe than that. I think it's appropriate to have other senior people in the organization doing it from that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would make like a QA manager or someone in charge of QA be the spokesperson. Yeah. Unless they're well trained, they're well recepted, they look good on camera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that wouldn't be me then.
No, me either.
I suppose basically, if it goes wrong, you've got to carry the can, haven't you? And you've got to be seen to be doing the right thing. So the most senior person in a serious situation, the most senior person, because then that shows also, this thing's senior management commitment. They're the person in charge. They hold the purse strings. They can get things done. They can make the changes in their organisation to stop it from ever happening again. Just a question there that is very important, this one actually, from Martha. For a company that is extremely small, let's say less than 50 people, who are not selling directly to the consumers, so they're not selling to the general public, they're very small, and the product has a limited impact on food safety, could a less formal plan work well?
I think it's a great question. I think so. I think so. And it goes back to what I was saying about right sizing it. Some companies don't need three-tiered system, but I think in what I understand they're describing is maybe a company that's a supplier to a branded company. And I appreciate the question because I didn't bring this up. If you're in that situation, your plan needs to be coordinated and integrated with your customer's plan. So, for instance, if I was a supplier to McDonald's, say I sold them cheese for the cheeseburgers, my plan, if I have an issue, needs to be integrated with theirs, because I'll guarantee if there's an issue that I caused as a supplier, McDonald's is going to be the one out in front of the media. It's not going to be my company. So that's a good point. You need to be, again, right-sized and integrated with where your risk lies. And that's the key about going through that risk analysis. Do we have a brand? No, we don't have a public brand, so we're not a public brand of peace. But what do we do? Well, we supply wheat or starch or an ingredient to this company. So what risks does that company face based on your actions or an issue you may have? And it could be even a fire or natural disaster, because now they're going to find themselves that they don't have the supplies and the supply chain to do it. So those are the things you have to look at when you go through the evaluations.
Yeah, I suppose it does lead on to another thing, actually, that if you are, okay, you don't supply directly to the consumer, but maybe you supply somebody that does, perhaps you should contact one or two of your bigger customers and ask them, have they got a crisis management plan, and what do you need? What do you need from us? How do we interface with you? What, in an emergency, who are the contacts? Who do we need to talk to? What do you need from us? That's how all the links in the chain start working together properly, and maybe backwards as well to suppliers. Would you agree with that, Steve?
You're absolutely right. It's a must. You need to be linked with it. And the other way around, if you are a branded corporation and you've got a large supplier that can impact you or bring risk to your brand, you should understand their crisis management plan and how they linked into yours.
Yeah. And just looking at, somebody typed in the actual root cause for the maple leaf one was a packaging machine that wasn't adequately cleaned, and so that's really at the lowest level that's caused such a, well, that's food safety, isn't it? That's caused a huge issue. So things can go wrong, and they will go wrong, even with best laid plans.
They can, and I agree with the individual. It was a packaging or a slicing machine. And it was the sanitation of the machine, but it wasn't due to normal sanitation cleaning methods. It was a bit complex once they found the issue, but again, it's one of those things that's not obvious that caused some severe impact. Severe impact.
Do you know anything about? Has there been a Kraft recall recently? Are you aware of that at all? Kraft Foods.
Yeah, I think there was some potential metal contamination for macaroni and cheese for Kraft that just was announced last couple of days.
That's right. So Paul said, it's probably a bit early to say because it's only just surfaced, that one, but did Kraft handle the recent recall correctly?
You're right. Time tells. I think when here in the U.S., you see there's so many recalls that are announced on a daily basis, and when I read it, said, well, it's small in scope, it's not huge. It's not huge or big for a company like Kraft. I think they just decided to do the minimum. They made their report to the FDA and issued their statement through the FDA, and they may have made some other reports in the news. They must have, because it was on public news.
Yeah.
But it didn't gain any traction. It just they just kind of, they're having a recall, and be aware of these code dates, and they moved on from there because it said some minor metal contamination, so you don't know the severity of that.
No, yeah, exactly. From what little I know about it, it was sort of a low-level foreign body contamination.
Right.
Metal, it could hurt somebody, but it's not going to hurt anybody seriously.
Right.
But actually, being proactive and doing that, can it actually build trust? In that way that people hear that, oh yeah, they're willing to recall $200,000 worth of products for the sake of some small metal fragments. These people take food safety seriously. So in terms of PR, it can be a win.
Oh, absolutely. Well, when they're required to do it, so they, when they have that aspect of it, they don't have much choice. But you're right. I think the fact that they're doing it and they word it properly and show what they're doing, it tends to help build on their brand, saying, "Oh, this is a reputable company. They're doing the right things."
Yeah.
Things.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one more question because we're coming up to the hour mark now. We could carry on. We've got loads of comments, but Paul's asked, where does a HACCP plan come into play? So how does this dovetail with the HACCP plan?
I think it dovetails because a HACCP plan, and I say this a little bit guarded, because the concept of a HACCP plan is identifying where your risk lies within your product, and so you should use your HACCP plan or that HACCP or that risk evaluation to expand it out, saying, well, if there was a failure here and it was something we missed, what does that mean to our brand? What does that mean to? Could it create a large crisis for us? Yes or no? And then how do you manage it? What I say, I said it with a guarded aspect of it. The concept of HACCP, I think, is outstanding. Identify your risk, your areas for your processes and your product, put in controls and actions and testing, things of that nature. Unfortunately, when the rubber hits the roads and the impact, I see most of them, they're not comprehensive. They're just, to me, I think they're kind of minimal in some cases that meet the certification and that aspect of it. And due to a lot of things, I don't think they're as comprehensive as they could be or should be. So, but I digress a little bit. The concept of HACCP is great. That should be one of the tools you look at when you look at product contamination, potential risk for your crisis management plan. That ought to give you some areas that you need to focus on and see what you need to do.
That's great, Steve. Okay, I think we're going to call it a day. I'll capture all these comments in the sidebar, and I won't lose them this time, I promise. It's been great to have you with us again today, Steve. It's lots of great discussion, loads of comments, and I'm sure the members have taken away a lot from your presentation today.
Well, I appreciate the people attending and the good questions. It's showing the involvement, and they were good questions, and I hope this helped some folks to kind of figure out what they need to do and again what's right for their organization. So I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you.
And you'll be back again a couple of times at least later in this year, won't you, Steve?
Yeah, I think there's 3 more times that I've got set up. I don't have the actual date in front of me, but I'll be back on 3 more occasions, I believe.
Okay, then. Thanks on behalf of the IFSQ and myself. It's been great, Steve. Thanks very much. Have a nice weekend. Go and enjoy the sun.
Yeah, thank you, and everybody else enjoy their weekend too. Thanks for attending.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Cheers, mate. Bye. That was great. Excellent presentation there, and the videos worked really well actually. And to give such a contrast between good and bad communication in a crisis situation was really excellent. So I'm sure you want to grab your certificates. If you go to the Poppins tab, you should be able to download your certificate. If you don't get it today, don't worry, because a couple of days after this webinar, I'll be sending an email to all registrants, and you'll have a copy of the webinar recording copy of the slides and the certificate, so you will get all of that, so don't worry about it. And you can always contact me at team@ifsqn.com for any queries or problems, etc. Or even a bit of praise, nice feedback, whatever you want. Okay. So all there is to say is thanks for your attendance today. Please sign up for next week's webinar, Brittaball, talking about 3 ways to make training stick. So that'd be great. So apart from that, have a lovely weekend. Happy Friday, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.